Hi.
Hi. How are you?
Good, what a treat.
An Easter treat.
An Easter treat.
I feel like I should have put a bonnet on for you.
Or some bunny ears.
That would make me feel more like I was at the Playboy Mansion and that you are expecting something that I'm not prepared to give.
Why aren't you prepared to give Playboy Mansion-esque gifts?
Because unless you were wearing a smoking jacket and had the kind of money that Hugh Hefner had, I know my worth.
That's amazing.
I know my value.
This is a lovely treat indeed. It feels like it's been weeks.
That's because it has.
It has, hasn't it?
Shall we let the listeners into the magic of podcasting?
Let's do that. I was going to say rear entry. Can you believe that?
Okay,
like
I was thinking behind
backstage passes, behind the scenes.
I was thinking behind the velvet rope.
Could you cut that, please? Could you?
I depend. You see, I don't know. I can't make any kinds of promises. It depends what amuses me. This is a podcast in which two friends have serious conversations about silly things and silly conversations about serious things.
I'm Simon Ellis.
And I'm Lee Miller.
Welcome to Midlifing. What's been going on?
Oh, are you sure you want the answer to that question?
Oh, should we skip that?
No, I'm telling you now. I'm peeling wet rot wood treatment off my fingers as we speak.
Sorry,
because
wet
rot wood treatment. It's a lot of enunciation required with that.
Oh, so it's wood that's been starting to rot.
Yeah,
and there's a treatment for it.
There is,
which
indeed.
Is a waterproofing treatment, I assume.
It's kind of like a adhesive solventy thing that it soaks in and solidifies. So it effectively petrifies what has turned into sponge and turns it back into. Well, it doesn't turn it back into wood. It turns it into a compound of wood and something probably
something
very bad
plastic.
for the environment. Yeah, something plastic, but something that, given that I've got windows that are about 300 years old. At this point, they're like the ship of Theseus. I don't know what is wood and what is filler.
And that's great. I love the ship of Theseus. So that means you've got the stuff on your hands and you're peeling it off.
Yeah, so I'm peeling it off because it's a bank holiday weekend and because I am middle-aged, I am doing the thing that probably the rest of the country is doing, which is DIY.
Do you fancy yourself as a bit of a DIYer?
No, I hate it. I hate it with a passion.
And did you YouTube? Did you get YouTube videos?
No, I don't need to YouTube things because there is kind of like a genetic memory. The reason I hate DIY with a passion is that my dad has turned, I think, is the word flipping? Yes, flipped lots of houses. He's bought, done them up, sold them, bought, done them up, sold them.
Flipping is the verb.
Yeah. It felt like most of my childhood was on a building site. The truth of the matter is it wasn't, but that's what it sort of felt like. So there are certain things that I don't need to YouTube because I just know how to do them because I've watched my dad do things.
So you are a DIYer in the sense that you know how.
I am a bodger. I am good enough to get by. And I know the principle of things, but
a bodger, did you say?
Yeah, I can do a bodge job.
Yeah, you have something that's a bit shit.
I can do an awful lot with polyfiller. I'm really, really good. Or for our North American audiences, spackle. But I can do a lot with polyfiller. So I'm not polyfillering today. I'm sorting out rotten wooden window frames in order that I can then fill them and paint them. Because I'm painting.
On the outside or the inside?
Both outside and inside.
Oh, it sounds like quite a big job.
Yeah, it's bigger than I anticipated, and I've taken a window out, as in totally removed the frame and everything.
Really?
To make my life a bit easier.
Which window? Because it's a little. I mean, here in London, it's freezing today. Is there a bit of air? Is there a bit of air going through the house there?
I've discovered that it's also quite chilly here as well.
Are you rugged up?
Oh, I am. I've got quite a sweat on now because I've got so many layers on to try and keep warm. And poor Bob is currently putting low-tech masking tape around the window frame so that we can do some painting later. She won't be able to feel her hands soon.
Oh no! It sounds like a total mess. Un casino, they say in Italian.
What does that mean?
It means a total mess.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Then it's. I mean, it's poorly timed. I'll give you that.
Is this a good time to do this? Should we come back to?
No, I don't.
Should
mean
we have a little pause? Should we take a pause while you finish your DIY?
We'll be pausing until bedtime if we were to. It's better that what I've done is I've timed my day. I put my wet rot wood treatment on, knowing that takes 2 hours to dry. So I thought that's a nice window to do a podcast.
Gotcha.
Then I can come back, fill, sand, paint, and hopefully be able to have some windows closed before bedtime.
Do you have some fingerless gloves that you can wear while you're doing all that work?
No, they don't work for me because I have Raynaud's.
You have what?
Raynaud's. You know, it's a circulation issue.
Raynaud's.
Raynauds.
Nauds.
So if you Google it, or DuckDuckGo it, or
please cut that out.
Oh, okay. If you DuckDuckGo or Ecosia it, you will see a picture of somebody's hands, and they're kind of like, you can see that the tops of the fingers go bright yellow. Well, or there's no blood in them, and I call it dead man's hands because I do look like a corpse, or my fingers look like a corpse hand. Are you DuckDuckGoing right now?
Oh, I sure am. Oh.
It's not. It doesn't warrant 3
But it's
hours.
fascinating. When you're cold, anxious, or stressed, your fingers and toes may change colour.
Yeah.
And they really do look a little bit like they're dead.
Yeah. They look like the hands of a
zombie
corpse.
fingers. Oh,
Yeah,
so when
totally.
they go blue, that doesn't look good, though, does it?
Mine don't go blue. Mine go yellow. Mine go the colour of a corpse. It's absolutely delightful.
I had a strange experience this week.
Oh.
I was doing the dishes. That's not the strange experience.
Who else would be preparing the food for the worms if it wasn't the dish doer?
Yes, the dish doer. English language is flexible, isn't it?
Yeah, now I've got the word in my head, dish doula. Like you are somehow birthing their cleanliness.
I don't know how to tell this story. It's a little bit strange. But you know,
Does it cast you in a bad light?
Possibly.
Oh,
I don't
cool.
know. Actually, no.
Just crack right on.
It cast me in a light. Put it that way.
Okay.
Actually, it's got to do with light. So I was doing the dishes, and as you know, top floor flat. The kitchen overlooks, or used to overlook, a tree, which previous listeners has been.
Yeah, I was going to say, refer to previous episodes.
It's been removed. So I have, let's say, backstage access to the backyards and extended backstage access to the backyards of the people behind us, including a series of windows. A little bit like, what's that name of that book, that beautiful book by the French author who wrote about, I think it's called Life, a User's Manual. Do you know the name of the author?
I don't, because I don't know the book. I just assumed we were going to immediately talk about Rear Window by Alfred Hitchcock.
Well, it's in the same vein, isn't it, really? Georges Perec.
Oh, okie dokie.
I'm not sure if that's actually the book. It might be another one of his books, but it's certainly Georges Perec's book, where it's basically a description of apartments and people in their apartments. And it's a little bit like that. You know, these aren't apartments, though. They're houses, but they're... And there was someone was masturbating.
Male or female?
Male.
Uh-huh.
And it's interesting because it's quite clear. And it was hard not to watch while I was doing the dishes.
All of life's rich tapestry is represented in that statement.
Isn't it?
It's hard not to watch somebody masturbating while I'm doing dishes. Right.
I mean, I kept trying not to.
Yeah.
And he was still going after I finished the dishes. And the only thought I had was that he must be a teenager, because no adult would have quite as much time on their hands, as it were, to do what this young fellow was doing.
Just so that people can build a picture before you carry on. in their heads. How far away are you from the aforementioned window?
Okay, I'm guessing 30 meters.
Okay.
It's
So
actually quite hard to estimate that in my mind.
put it in football pitches for you, because you know that would work for you. Or a tennis court. There you go. How many tennis courts away were you?
Oh, actually, that's a good. So a tennis
Thank you.
a tennis court is goodness me, is it 78 feet, 72 feet long?
Nobody cares. You just tell us how many tennis courts away
I
you were
reckon it
from-
was about a tennis court away.
Oh, only a tennis court away.
Yeah, I reckon maybe a little further, but not much further.
Right.
There was a point where I thought, just get a curtain. The weird thing is, of course, I can see his mother flipping around downstairs underneath him. But I did think that he hadn't quite understood what happens when you have a light on and it's dark outside. I'm guessing. I didn't quite know what to do. Like, I didn't know where to look. Because it's not like I can do the dishes at another spot in the house. And it wasn't, I wouldn't call it like, must-see TV. But it was a little bit fascinating. I've never watched someone else masturbate.
I have watched people masturbate.
I feel quite squeamish. See, I'm a little bit...
I've watched people masturbate in the context of performance art.
But that's different. That is different from watching someone in a private situation. Isn't it? I mean, the
yeah,
performance act itself is a.
So
I didn't.
what did you do when you finished washing, and presumably he was still...
He was, because, like I say, he was taking his time. I then moved on to doing Italian grammar.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, what do you think your responsibility is now?
In that situation.
Well, the situation has passed.
Oh.
But you know...
Okay, so now... I don't think I have any responsibility whatsoever. I mean, there's no way, for example, I want to shame the dude by saying, hey, get some curtains, just to let you know, right? I mean, you could say that is to leave a little note to the boy who lives upstairs. Ain't going to go well, is it?
I suppose that's the complexity that I'm thinking about. We're talking, we've circled around the idea of nascent sexuality in a variety of ways over the conversations that we've had. Because I don't know if, on one level, taking a step back and just sort of thinking about somebody listening to this, there's a part of me that goes, can we use this conversation at all? The kind of the complexity of what we're talking about here is something that everybody does.
Yep.
Yeah?
It's super natural.
But then I also find myself kind of being caught in that moment of, if this was a young adult in my care, would I want somebody to educate them in the importance of what responsibility do we have as elders in the community to say to somebody, mate, this is something that is great and lovely, but you need to
get some curtains.
Yeah,
or even just let you know that people can see you.
Seen.
I mean, there is a lot of people. There are a lot of houses on these 2 blocks of flats.
Yeah, that's a lot of people who, even if it's just the top floor, the top 2 floors.
Yeah, I reckon top 2 floors probably. Maybe anyway. Yeah,
that's a lot of people.
Yeah,
it is interesting, that idea of being in a moment where you capture somebody's private moment, which is so intensely private, which at the same time is being broadcast. There's a couple who live across the road from me whose flat back onto the churchyard, and thankfully I've never been able to work out which couple it is, because I never ever want to know, because in the summer they leave their roof window open, which is why I can't work out which flat it's from. So it could be one of 4 or 5.
Right, is that one of those sort of angular?
Yeah, one of those like sort of, I think, like a Velux kind of window. I'm sure they don't do this on purpose, but they seem to time their very noisy sex at the same time that Jeffrey needs to go for his late night shit. Which means that I am often standing in the churchyard. Oh, no.
Listening.
No.
Talk about Pavlov's dogs gone wrong.
But Jeffrey is he's a lovely guy. He's a very friendly and helpful dog. But there will be some moments where he will just be going, oh, I think a cat's been over here. I'm just going to sniff. I'm like, could you just do your shit and we can go back home and I can get to bed? He's like, no. I just need to check everything's okay before bedtime. So he can be out for like 5 to 10 minutes. Not really walking, because we're not walking around. He just wants to sniff his area of the churchyard. Yeah. So I'm covering maybe a 30 square foot area in minute detail, which is underneath the window of these people who are having very, very loud sex.
And you can only hear them.
I can only hear them, but that already is such intimacy, such a level of intimacy that makes me go, oh, that is my discomfort.
Yes, I think this is exactly what we're talking about. We're not talking about the act itself. I'm actually talking about my discomfort with, and also the attraction of watching it. I don't want to make too much of that because I'm a fully grown adult and he's not. So there's already something a little bit a bit dirty old man, as in the old parlance, Ugh.
When I'm standing underneath their window, I feel so uncomfortable now. I know that there is nothing for me to do about that discomfort. It's like, I'm not going to intervene into their pleasure. I'm not going to tell them to stop. I'm not going to go, oi, I can hear you. It's like, well, don't fucking stand under my window would be the sensible response in that moment.
Yeah.
But there's nothing ocular to grasp onto. I don't know who this is connected to. It's just, it's a soundscape.
Yes.
And so it's quite diffuse, even though it's present. And I don't know,
yes, it's vague or it's
exactly.
It's
abstract. That's a great word, Simon. It's abstracted from its originary source, and I can just kind of go, oh, okay, this is me feeling weird, and I'm feeling weird not because I'm hearing it, but what if somebody sees me hearing it?
Yes. So you become that, but the voyeur.
Exactly that. Whereas in this instance, because there is a level of display, that's I suppose why I'm asking questions about what is one's responsibility. Yeah.
I mean, I could have just stopped, right? I could have just turned away and gone and done something else. I mean, in a way, that might have been like I mean, I don't want to overstate my preoccupation with it because it wasn't like I was just staring. I was a little bit confused, going, "Doesn't he realise? Isn't that obvious? That when you could so clearly that's not obvious unless he is performing for all the flats."
I think where maybe we are locked behind our age now.
Uh-huh.
I keep being reminded it's not a case of if they have a sex tape; it's a case of how many sex tapes they have and who has seen them, and this sense that their sexuality is a broadcast medium.
Yeah, I mean, literally.
Or what? Yeah.
So the concept of privacy, your concept of privacy, just does not apply.
Yeah, I was listening to a podcast the other day where somebody was saying, if somebody sends you nudes, you shouldn't share them, and I was just finding myself going, who the fuck thinks they need to say that out loud? Don't share nudes that you're given. It's like, well, what?
You're saying nudes, are you? Not news.
No, I'm saying nudes.
Okay,
nudes.
thank you.
Sorry, I'm saying nudes because I'm English, so I'm putting a kind of a...
I was just helping out our Antipodean listeners. Everyone shares news. What are you talking about?
Naked photographs.
That is messy, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the thing that comes to mind, of course, is revenge porn.
Oh, mate. And that is like, it's... Yeah, and I think,
which is it's where that's heading, isn't it?
That's where, it's absolutely that's where that's heading, and I think that's sort of what I was dancing around when I was saying that. I remember, I think it might have been Scarlett Johansson.
That's right. She had her iCloud account.
Yeah, or was it
or something?
Or was it Jennifer Lawrence? It was one of those kind of levels of celebrity.
Yeah,
and they exactly that. They had their iCloud account hacked, and the number of, and this would be like 4 or 5 years ago now, maybe longer, but the number of press reports that kind of went along the lines of, well, she shouldn't really have nude photographs in there, should she?
Yeah.
So ultimately, what we were hearing back was this idea of she was asking for it. It's not even a coded version of she was asking for it. It's just a stated version of she was asking for it because she had those photographs available. So, if you don't want people to see your tits, don't take pictures of them. And you kind of think, I fundamentally don't understand that as a standpoint.
Don't wear that short skirt.
Yeah. Don't take those photographs if you don't want people to see them.
Controlling people's lives because of what others might do to them.
We kind of, I think this has been in the press a lot recently in relationship to the horrifying death of Sarah Everard, in the sense that immediately after her disappearance, people were sort of posting how to stay safe advice.
Yeah.
And then very quickly, it's... maybe the way we stay safe is by training men not to be predators.
Yeah, let's talk to men.
But we just don't. We don't have that conversation. Oh well, let me ask that. Did you ever have that conversation aimed at you about how you should be?
No, no, absolutely not. I mean, I think I would. I don't think I. It's very hard to. I don't. I think the norm when I was growing up was of an attitude towards women. If we're just talking solely about that, that was at best mocking and at worst just utterly disrespectful. I think that was the norm.
Yeah.
And I think those norms infected me as they very strongly, very, very strongly. And so I don't think I think that's how do I've had to
deprogram?
Yeah, I think that's, had to do a lot of kind of thinking and reflecting on my behavior as a young man, teenager, early 20s, mid 20s, and the assumptions I was making I'll use the word thoughtless, because it is that sort of sense where I'm not trying to deflect any blame here or not take any responsibility, but I'm effectively reflecting the culture that I was a part of. Yeah, there's no filtering of that culture through my own understanding and the conversations I was having. They were all it was pretty one-way traffic. I don't know if that's making sense there.
Yeah, it does make sense.
I mean, I have no idea about in relation to other young men my age, but I do think that's changed a lot between then and now, but also I don't think it's changed at all at the same time.
See, I don't think it's changed at all.
Yeah, right.
I think that we've got language to call out things. And I was having a conversation with a colleague the other week, and she used a phrase that I thought was really interesting, because we were doing some team teaching together over
Teams.
It was actually. We were doing team teaching over Teams, and it was really nice. And I used the phrase cancel culture.
And what is this mythical thing you're talking about?
Well, what was really interesting is she picked me up on it. And I was so grateful that she did this in front of a room full of students, or a Teams meeting full of students. She said, I just want to call attention to your use of the term cancel culture. I think that immediately places it in the negative, and I'd like you to reflect perhaps using the term call-out culture. And I sat with that and thought it was a really interesting nuance. And her perspective was that the use of the term cancel culture is kind of media-focused, media-driven, that idea of the turning up the temperature of what is often, not exclusively by any stretch of the imagination, but what is often starts out as, hey, can we just stop and look at this for a minute? Now, of course, those moments become weaponized,
or in relation to free speech.
Yeah. We understand that they can become weaponized. It can escalate. But if you immediately think of this as a cancel culture context, you potentially stop the benefit of being able to say, hey, can we just pause and reflect on this for a minute?
See, I think of calling out as being basically part of the same. That is, I know, you don't know, I'm showing you the way things are. So there's a kind of schooling related to calling out. And so I think that what you just described is different from that, which is, whoa, hang on, you've confused me here, because I think when I hear you say that, this is what I hear. Is that what you mean? That's a very different thing from calling out someone, right? Where calling out is so much closer to the idea of cancel culture, in my experience or my understanding of it.
Yeah, it is. But I also I think that that this is an emerging academic who's younger than me, who is more internet literate than I am. She lives online in a completely different way than I do. And I found it interesting because what she was talking about was experiencing casual misogyny. And I found that really interesting because I will regularly use the term casual sexism when I talk about, people's behaviours. And to hear it turned up to misogyny was another moment of me going, I think that might actually be accurate. I think that might be reflecting what I'm seeing, not sexism, which is problematic, of course. But actually being rooted in a deep sense of hatred.
Yeah, because I that's what's fascinating in a way, as for thinking about being a teenager. I think that culture that I was absorbing was, I think you could say it was about hatred of women, but that's not what I was absorbing. If you understand what I mean, I don't think it was. You could definitely call it a misogynistic, a sort of a chronically misogynistic culture. This is growing up in New Zealand in the 80s, basically.
Yeah.
But there's no way that that my feeling of it was that there was something, that it wasn't about hatred, which is curious, right? There's a discrepancy between, I think, the way the culture works and what I thought was happening. I don't really understand what I'm kind of getting at there, except to say that I don't think I was hating women. And yet I was absorbed in and part of culture that I think was, well, I don't know. Maybe the question is, where is the line between casual sexism and casual misogyny?
Is that the thing that we're talking about here, or are we talking about the distinction between intention and reception? That what you intend, and I'm going to take it off you, Simon, because this is not
Sure.
about you. This is about this. You know,
I mean, I was just using that as an example.
Yeah, no, I know, absolutely. But I'm
going to back myself into a wall about.
But you've also just you've reflected upon your experience of being a young man in New Zealand in the 80s. So I can reflect on being a young man in the northwest of England in the late 80s, early 90s. Just to
remind our listeners that you're a little bit younger than I am.
Motherfucker. Not much. But hey, I'm young enough to have not been given my COVID jab yet. You're old enough to have been given it.
Thank you.
You're over the COVID hill.
Yeah.
And far away. But I don't think my actions were intended to communicate a hatred of women. But
No.
I absolutely believe that they were steeped in a generations deep anxiety about women. And I know that there were things that I did that I didn't intend to be received in any negative way. But I bet they were, reflecting upon, behaviours and things that I said and just ways that I was. And, that level of entitlement that I carried with me.
Oh, yeah. No question. No question.
It's hard for me not to own the fact that the space between what I intended and what was received was probably miles wide.
Yeah.
But to go back to this idea of a call-out culture, there was absolutely no way that the young women that I was surrounded by had any
means to do that.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. It's really... it's but yes, I'm with you. I don't. Also, it's not. I think that's that idea of the distinction or the distance between intent and reception is. Again, I'm not trying to trivialize it at all because I'm really with you. But wow, is that complex? It's complex as an adult, but as a teenager, trying to make sense of that. Well, that's not what I meant.
No.
I didn't mean any harm by, as we've talked about that before, those apologies. Sorry to anyone who was offended by my rampant misogyny.
Which is why I think that idea of call-out culture, while I hear what you're saying about it being much closer to something that's schooling, I do find myself going, I think perhaps the schooling is necessary. As difficult and as uncomfortable and as perhaps... Just awkward and sitting in, experientially in a way that we just don't enjoy.
Yeah.
I do find myself going, I wonder if it's just a really necessary moment of having, having the reins pulled in.
Yeah.
Because we can say young women are trained to walk with one eye over their shoulder and young men aren't.
Yeah.
And that's because we're not teaching boys that they need to close their curtains.
Something that someone wrote in, which I...
Oh, it was about mortified.
Should we read that out?
Yeah, do it.
Just to this is from Emma. Hello, thanks
Hi,
for
Emma.
your... Hi, Emma. Hope you're listening still. Thanks for your podcast. You mentioned mortified. Mortified is commonly used in Ireland, especially the shortened version morto, usually in a Dublin accent. Can you do a Dublin accent?
No.
Oh, come on. You can't.
I don't. I think I can do.
When you see the word morto, M-O-R-T-O.
I wouldn't roll the R there.
Oh, morto.
Yeah, because you're doing Italian.
Yeah.
I can't do a Dublin accent. I don't think. Hang about.
It means dead, of course, in Italian.
Yeah.
Turd, morto.
Will you be having your tea? Will you be having tea? Morto. No, I can't.
That's not
Morto.
bad. But she says you wouldn't say I'm morto, but rather just morto.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't own it, but instead it's an entity that permeates your being. Isn't that cool? That's what it feels like anyway. Or more often you'd say bleeding morto.
Bleeding morto.
You can also have it for others as in morto for her. Which she provides a link, which will be in the show notes.
That's nice. Can I give you a word that when I read that email, it reminded me of something that didn't occur to me when we were talking, because we were talking about
mortified.
Yeah, mortified. Yeah. But the way Emma talks about it made me think of a very specific Cumbrian dialect word that I came across when I lived in Cumbria, when I was in my late teens. And the word is ladgeful.
Ladgeful.
Yeah, I guess you would spell it Ladgeful, although I've never seen it written down.
Beautiful word.
It means to be. It means so that something is embarrassing. So somebody would walk in with toilet paper stuck to their shoe. Oh, ladgeful. And to be embarrassed, you would be gay-ladged.
You'd be what?
Gay-ladged.
Really?
So gay is Cumbrian dialect for very, and ladged as in the past tense of ladgeful. It really struck me that I can't say that anywhere except in a very specific part of the UK.
Gay-ladged.
To have anybody understand what it means.
Amazing.
And I've got a second year student who's from the same town that I lived in, that I went to school
Cumbria.
in. Yeah, and she said something in a tutorial. And I was just, oh my God, that is so ladgeful. And she just, the look of kind of shock, horror,
and pleasure.
Then pleasure that went across her face. And she's like, how do you know what that means? I'm like, nobody says that. I can't. And she's had to strip it out of her vocabulary in university.
Because it doesn't compute.
Yeah. And she's like 70 miles away from where she, she goes to university about 70 miles away from where she grew up. But the word just doesn't exist. Doesn't exist.
Amazing. So thanks, Emma.
Thanks, Emma, because it reminded me of Ladgeful and allowed me to make a second year laugh.